Yep, thank you. Yes. Um, a little background information first. New Jersey ranks fifth in the pepper acreage. We have about 3,300 acres of peppers grown in New Jersey. We rank third in yield and value of peppers, and that's behind like California and Florida. Okay? Hey, New Jersey's a powerhouse in some crops, no question. The value is approximately 33 million, and that's from Ag Statistics in 2010. And it's probably about the same now. It hasn't changed much, yes. Peppers are grown in the state for both fresh market and processing. Okay? So, pepper production in New Jersey is an important crop. It's no small potato, so to speak. So, when you have a pest,
between sweet and hot peppers, what's the percentage?
well, let's go with bell peppers. The greatest amount of acreage is for bell peppers. Hot peppers, I would hazard around 200 acres maybe, substantially less, yeah. So, given the value of peppers, when we have a pest that threatens the existence of the industry, people take notice. You know, we got to do something about it. All right, so here's a pepper field. These are bell peppers, single row on plastic. And, whoops, there we go. The primary pests include European corn borer, corn earworm, and aphids. These are sort of the traditional pests. When I was a private consultant in Michigan, those were the three pests that I was most concerned about. Actually, the greatest was European corn borer. But now, here in New Jersey, pepper weevil has become, so to speak, the wild card. When you have pepper weevil, nothing else matters. You forget about the other pests, because pepper weevil is all consuming. Okay, what is pepper weevil? This is the adult weevil here. This is a small pepper that's just starting to develop. If you can put your fingers up and imagine 3/16 of an inch gap, that's how big pepper weevils are. They're tiny. And 3/16 of an inch is a large one. All right? 1/3 of that length is the bill or the beak here, and then the rest of the body. The scientific name, Anthinomus eugenei, it's pepper weevil. It's a subtropical species of the Americas. Probably has co-evolved with pepper species over the years. When peppers began to become their own group, pepper weevil was right there evolving with them. Okay? All of these originated in the Americas, in the tropical, subtropical portions of North and South America. It currently lives year-round in southern U.S., Mexico, Central and South America, and the Caribbean. It cannot live in New Jersey over the winter. They need a constant supply of food, and fortunately a hard frost does a lot to killing off their food supply. There are two other Anthinomus species, two related species. One that's very local, cranberry weevil, which we can pick up over in Hamilton very easily. And the other is boll weevil, the one that terrorized the South in cotton production. This is the cranberry weevil. They look very, very similar. Boll weevil is larger, cranberry weevil is smaller than pepper weevil. Okay. Pepper weevil life cycle. A female weevil lays about 200 eggs, one at a time, and wanders around from flower bud or fruit, small fruit, one at a time, laying eggs. And you can see the egg scars in the small fruit over here, where those little dimples are. The female has inserted an egg in the cuticle, and as the pepper fruit grows, it causes that dimple because the tissue is dead right there. So it causes that dimple to form. The weevils initially go after the small fruit, and when that egg hatches, there's 3 instars, or 3 stages of the larva, which is here, growing inside the pepper, and it feeds in here. Now, whether it's the egg or the larva itself, but something tells the plant there's a problem with this fruit, and the plant will abort that fruit, falls to the ground. Okay? The larva will go ahead and continue growing and developing in that fallen fruit, and eventually we can get to the pupal stage here, and then transforms into the adult, and the adult will then chew a hole in the side and escape from the pepper. Okay? This can all be accomplished in 2.5 to 3.5 weeks. Very short life cycle. The pupa resides in a cell inside the pepper where the larva had been feeding. Here's the exit holes for the adults in the side of the peppers. And like I say, 2.5 to 3.5 weeks from egg to adult. The hotter it is, the better. The host plants, they will feed and reproduce on all pepper species and varieties. They don't care. If it's a pepper, they're on it. Doesn't matter if it's hot, jalapeno, banana, Cubanelles, bells, it doesn't matter. They like them all. All right? However, they will feed on any of the solanaceous plants, nightshade, horse nettle, Jimson weed, tomato, potato, eggplant. But they only reproduce on peppers and maybe nightshade. Okay? And this is the end result of a pepper weevil infestation. You see all these little fruit on the ground. Those all have larvae, pupae, or adults inside of them. And this is where the loss comes for the farmers. They have these nice, beautiful looking plants with no fruit. The fruit is all fallen off on the ground. You cannot, there's no use for these small, fallen fruit. Whoops. So after the population of pepper weevils has developed in the field, you look at the plants, there's no fruit there because they all have been aborted. And it gets to a point, this is a field at the Shepherd Farm back in 2008. The infestation started in the center of the field. When the plants don't have any fruit, they grow taller. And you have to kind of squint a little bit to see it, but the plants in this area here are all taller than all the rest of the plants in the field. That's where the infestation got started. The question is, how did the weevils get there in the first place? And that's the crux of the problem. How did the weevils get around? History of pepper weevil in New Jersey. We have had serious infestations occurring in the past. 1957, 67, 85, 88, and 89. You'll notice there's an 18-year gap in here. Like, what's going on? How do we have these things just, boom, there it is? We can never really figure out what was going on with this in the past. 2004, everything started to change. That year, one of the most serious infestations occurred. 80% yield loss, valued at $60,000. That's when it when pepper weevil reared up and slapped us in the face. saying, hey, pay attention to me, I'm here. And I use 2004 to say this is the beginning of the modern era of nearly annual pepper weevil infestations in New Jersey. Remember, we went for a stretch of 10 years in one case, 18 years in another case between serious infestations. Now we have almost every year somewhere a serious infestation of pepper weevil. You know, what has changed? How is this happening? The worst insect pest for peppers. And why is pepper weevil a pest? Because it's invasive. It has very few natural enemies here. There are spiders, there are some parasitoids that attack it, but in general, we don't have any natural control for pepper weevils. They have a short life cycle and they're very prolific. One female weevil produces 605,000 progeny in 3 generations. And that's at 45% mortality. If the mortality is less than that, the offspring goes into the millions. So this is a pest that can spring up very, very quickly out of nowhere. And suddenly we have a very significant issue in our fields. Life cycle closely associated with peppers. Lays eggs on the smaller fruit, saving the large fruit to reproduce. The problem is, once the weevils have run out of small fruit to lay the eggs into, they will then begin laying eggs into the larger fruit. And once beyond a certain point, the plant doesn't abort those. So, when you have a heavily infested field, the farmer is out there picking because he has to try to salvage as much of the crop as he can. They may be picking fruit that have pepper weevils inside of them, but if the grubs haven't fed near the outer wall of the fruit may look perfectly fine. It goes into the bin, it goes to the processor, or is sold and sends off to grocery stores, or to, like say, a processor. And that fruit infested with weevil then gets processed. It goes into sweet relish. The trash, the crop residue that they don't use, goes in a dumpster out back. And the dumpster, then the weevils in the dumpster just whoop, fly off, and there they go. Since pepper weevil traditionally, in its native place of origin, they have parasitoids that help moderate the populations. But even in places like Florida, where it's endemic, even there, they cannot manage pepper weevil effectively. Yeah. Okay. The problem with pepper weevil is that once the infestation has established, you can't get rid of it. Given all the insecticides that we have available to us, you just cannot kill the larvae because the fruit is aborted, it's lying on the ground. You can't get the insecticide to that larva. So one thing I am doing, we're looking into different ways of trying to remove the fallen fruit. And that's becoming a problem. Yeah. Farmers should regard pepper weevil as a pathogen, a disease organism, as opposed to an insect pest. Most insect pests that farmers encounter, their population can be knocked down or exterminated, usually with 1 or 2 spray applications or applying some other management tool. Pepper weevil, you cannot do that. Not because you don't want to, but because its biology is such, you just can't get rid of it that way. Once a population is established, you're stuck with it until either the end of the season, a hard frost kills the plants, or you give up and say, to hell with it, there's nothing left to harvest. Detection. Since we can't control it, we can suppress it. When we spray insecticides, we can slow down the development of the population but it will still continue to spread across the field. So if we can't control it that way, we have to control it by avoiding it, prevent it from showing up. And so that's where the pheromone cards come in. We set these cards up at strategic places on the farms where they want us to monitor for pepper weevil. And we try to intercept that very first individual getting into the farm. Once, with any of these traps, if we pick up one weevil and tell the farmer, you need to go out and spray the peppers now. Don't wait 2 or 3 days. You have to do it now. Because we don't know what that one weevil represents. It could be the only weevil in the whole area got stuck on that card. It could be that there are 10 other weevils around and that one just happened to get on the card. We don't know. And so we have to assume the worst. You need to spray now. Field scouting, and some of the research papers I've looked at coming out of Texas and southern states, they recommend 10 sticky cards per acre. It's not feasible. When you have a farm that maybe has 50 acres of peppers, 50 acres times 10 is 500 traps. These traps, even though it's just simply lures and sticky cards, you have one kit costs around $40 that will give you 2 cards for the season. So 250 times 40, you're starting to talk big bucks. Plus, who's got the time to go around and check those 500 traps? That's ridiculous. We can't, it's not feasible. So we've taken the tack that we try to put them in strategic points of entry coming into the farm, places where we think the weevil would show up first. The weevil has a clump distribution in fields. Yep. Sure. For example, this year we have one farm infested in Hamilton. The infestation started at the south end of the field, and it has gradually worked its way north. The farmer was spraying the entire field. I don't blame him, but probably he could have sprayed the southern third of the field most of the time and gotten the same results. But I'm not going to tell him, because this is such a dastardly pest that you don't want to screw around with it. Non-selective. The traps are not. One of the problems with these traps is that the lures are not designed specifically for pepper weevil. We actually can attract about 10 different species of weevils to these cards. So it becomes tricky to identify pepper weevil, because these other weevils are small, dark colored, they have the long beak, they all look very, very similar. And in fact, in 2005, we made a mistake. I had set some cards up, among the first ones I ever put out, and immediately, I caught a weevil. And I called our entomologist at the research station. I said, Jerry, it's the same size, it's the same color. And he said, yeah, well, hey, sounds like it's a weevil, pepper weevil. So that farmer sprayed. The other farmers, neighbors, they sprayed. We had thousands of dollars worth of insecticide sprayed for nothing, because we finally had discovered a paper that described in detail what a pepper weevil looks like. And what I had caught was not pepper weevil. So we had thousands of dollars worth of insecticide spread across 3 or 4 farms, spraying for a pest that they didn't have. And in 2005, there were no weevils, pepper weevils. So always identify your pest first before you do anything. And then, as I mentioned in the previous talk about this rod, we used that as well. I'm not sure about that. Okay, here's a sticky card that we had out at one farm, and most of the insects that are on this card are pepper weevils.
Oh, wow.
In 2013, we trapped over 10,000 weevils. That's a lot. Okay, over the years, we found that most of the infestations that we find occur in August. If we look at the growing season here and relative numbers going up, most of the infestations we find occur in August, and then we finish out the year. Farmers that have fields that become infested at this point, yes, they will probably suffer some yield loss. How much? We don't really know, because it's very difficult for farmers to keep accurate yields on something like peppers because of the vagaries of weather and pesticide applications and so on. There's no way to come to like a standard an average yield. So we never really know for sure how much yield loss there is, but I can tell you that there is some. Now, I'm going to reference 2013 because 2013 was a major pepper weevil year for us. In 2013, we had fields that we found infested in May. Several of these fields were abandoned before the end of the season because of pepper weevils, but also because of plant diseases. But when the infestation occurs early in the summer, the potential for humongous yield loss increases. If we pick them up in August or September, then the infestation causes minor yield loss, relatively speaking. Grants to the rescue. Thanks to Bernadette and working with me, we were able to secure 2 SARA grants, one for 2012 and one for 2013, and a Charles Myers Vegetable Growers Award of $6,000 in 2013. These helped greatly to help us figure out what's going on with pepper weevil, because up to this point, it still wasn't clear how the weevils were getting here. We had suspicion about how the weevils got into New Jersey, but then how did they spread once they got here? You know, just a lot of unanswered questions.
So how did they get in?
We'll find out. This is approximately the area that we were concerned with. Hamilton is over in here. Swedesboro is over this way. Salem County raises a lot of peppers. So this is approximately the area that we were looking at. And here gives a little bit of a history of the infestations. 2004, outside of Hamilton, at this one farm, then 2005 there was nothing, and then from 2006 to 8, they had pepper weevil infestations each year. This farm went out of business. 2009, they stopped growing peppers. 2010, 11, other farms in the area picked up pepper weevil infestations and continued. And then we had other farms hitting infestations these other years. 2012 was not a good year for pepper weevil. We had infestations scattered all over the place. Not really severe ones, but ones to keep us on our toes. And one of the problems was in how the peppers were being harvested and marketed. One of the farmers in the Hamilton area have a repacker where they would send their excess or smaller fruit. You can't get the prime price for them for the seconds, so they send them to the repacker and they take them and do whatever. So you would have this conveyor here. The farm workers are picking the peppers, putting on the conveyor, comes in here, dumps right into these boxes, produce bins. The truck then drives on back to the packing shed, They wash them off and then send them on to the repacker. At the repacker, they take the produce bins off and pick up new produce bins and drive right back out to the field to be there to get the next batch. This, we found, probably becomes a very important highway because the repacker becomes the central point for pepper weevils hanging around the dumpster. Okay, I'll show you a picture of that in a second. So, the question is, how do the weevils get here? We started with this. You're going to love this diagram. Florida, Texas, Mexico, and Central America. That's our source population. We have a produce distributor that brings in peppers from other locations. In the early spring, we don't have any peppers here locally to give them, so they have to buy them from somewhere else. The peppers come in, and they go from here, they get taken to a second location, to a third location, and many times these are open air produce haulers. So if there's any weevils that came in here, they're riding around free on the back of a truck, and if the wind blows right or they smell something that attracts them, whoop, off they go. They go to the repacker. And from the repacker, we have these trucks coming to and from the farms with those produce bins on the back. The farms, the explosions here, 1 and 2, the farms send the peppers in, they bring back the empty bins, and back and forth it goes. Then we have brokers, people who sell produce, working with the repacker, so that could be another source of weevils coming in. Then we discovered, well, there's a waste hauler. The guy that takes away the dumpster that has all the waste material in it. So we start tracking down, well, where does the waste hauler go? Well, they go 20, 30 miles to their dump site, wherever that is. And from there, they go to a landfill. We went up to the top of the Cumberland County landfill, put a pepper weevil trap up there, and caught pepper weevils on Mount Cumberland County. The waste hauler would send dumpsters that were damaged to a dumpster repair guy who happened to be less than half a mile from a pepper producer. So there was another potential pathway for the weevils. And so then we have peppers coming into the auction and terminal markets, the Vineland auction and the terminal market in Philadelphia. And again, we have farms that would go to these places to get produce to bring back for their farm markets. So there's another avenue. And then, what about the migrants? Some of the migrants come straight up out of Florida. Is there a chance that they bring along weevils with them? Don't know. Possibly. And then we have ethnic markets. We had grocery stores in Bridgeton that would bring in produce from Mexico. So all these different things were possibilities for the arrival of pepper weevils. And then we had the blueberry migrants, the guys that work specifically to harvest blueberries. This year, they're under suspicion because the infestation that we found in Hamilton occurred right at the same time the blueberry migrants came in to pick blueberries. So, all this is going on. Plus, we found out there's all kinds of medical legal services that go out to the farms, to the migrant camps. We've got people driving all over everywhere. Legal services, social services, food vendors, the prostitutes were out there. We had county agents, our field scouts, and other agribusiness people driving up and down these fields. I'm like, what the hell is going on? How could we ever figure this mess out? So, one of the problems you may notice is the weevils get distributed around fairly easily. Yep. Why is this? One, because weevils fly readily. Most weevils, when you disturb them on a plant, they will tuck their legs together and drop to the ground. Pepper weevil will do the same thing, except as soon as they land on the ground, they spread out their wings and fly off. They fly readily. The other thing is, even back in the 1930s, it was found that pepper weevils will ride on vehicles for up to 15 miles or more. How can they do that? Because they have cute feet. They have, this is the underside of the tarsal pad here of a weevil. This is from the hind leg. You have on each side a tarsal pad, and on the fringe are long hairs, and in the center are spongy hairs. These here hairs are all geared, this is the spongy hairs here. These hairs are all geared to help the weevil stay on slick surfaces. You look at the pepper fruit, that fruit is pretty smooth, you know. If you don't have a good grip, you're never going to get anywhere. So they have developed these really sticky little feet, electrostatic, moisture. They cling right to surfaces very nicely. And there they go, you know. They seem to have a propensity for getting onto vehicles. Why, I don't know. This is one of the things I'm hoping to answer. Why they do that. Maybe because the vehicles are warmer or something, I don't know. But anyway, they would go for a ride with you. We've demonstrated this several times. All right, so how does pepper weevil get into New Jersey? We have different possibilities. One, we know they don't overwinter. They don't have a diapause. They don't have a resting stage through part of the year. They have to have a constant supply of food. We don't import them on southern transplants. Our extension agents have worked over farmers enough to tell them, don't do this. Don't bring in southern transplants. It goes bad. Okay? So the farmers don't do that, or at least not many of them, if any. Migrant workers, we don't know. Weather fronts, possibility, come in on weather fronts. But food processing plants and repackers, that's where we decided we need to look. And this is one of the repackers. We'll do a little scan around. You can see here's the empty produce bins. There's the dumpster. And we have a perfect setup here. There's the dumpster. Here's our trap over to the side of the dumpster. And that's what the dumpster looks like from above. That's all chewed up peppers, the pepper residue from what they were using. No, and they won't. This is one of the few repacker processors that I've been able to talk with, and they said, we're not doing anything. Okay, 2013, we have different locations for the processing plants. The first number is the number of weevils we caught in May. The second number is what we caught for the season. And you can see that we caught quite a number of weevils overall, and this one especially. 2013 was the year of a perfect storm for pepper weevil. We have our processing plant here, and we had tomatoes here, peppers, tomatoes, peppers all over here. This is about 1.5 miles. We had weevils coming across here. You can see the dates where we picked up the weevils. And then backing out further, the yellow areas are where we had infestations in other fields around. What we found was this. The processor would bring in produce from out of state, Florida, Arizona, Mexico. They would bring in, process it, and we would start picking up weevils on our trap that was right across the road, because the processor would not talk with us to let us put a trap up on their premises. So there was a dead end sign on a road across the street where Bernadette thought, well, that's a great place for a trap. I never would have picked it, but I'm glad she did. That trap has caught more weevils than any other place that we've been looking at. So anyway, we begin to catch weevils in May and June. These were weevils that came in on out-of-state produce. Around the end of June, we started having our own local produce maturing and was being taken to the repackers, so the number of weevils declined. Except these weevils then spread out to the farms, our local farms, and lo and behold, here in August, we began to catch weevils again. But these weevils were New Jersey grown because our farmers brought these peppers in, and they were now showing up on our trap across the road from the processor. And you can see we were catching very large numbers. 2013 was a bad year. So the processors released weevils mid to late spring. The farms became infested. The farms sent produce back mid to late summer to the processors, and they consequently released the weevils back out again. What can be done once it's here? Not much. We monitor for pepper weevil, but pheromone traps only say weevils are present. Spraying we've already covered. Sanitation. Well, this could work, except that none of our farmers really want to take the time to sanitize everything. Every time they bring back a load of produce bins from the repacker, they don't want to take the time to hose them down or spray clean them or so on, because it takes time. And when you've got produce that you need to get off to market, you can't take the time. So what did we learn in 2013? We learned that the processors, repackers, and terminal markets are the most important source of pepper weevil for New Jersey. Pepper weevils have a flight dispersal for short distances, and this could be important. I think they can move about a mile on their own. They're very small insects, they're not strong flyers, but I think that they may be able to make a mile on their own. We cannot control the pepper weevils with pheromone traps. We tried a little experiment having sticky cards with and without lures. As you can see here, the lured cards caught almost three times as many weevils as the non-lured cards. So and this was in a 2-acre field of peppers. We had 10 traps altogether in that 2 acres. We could not slow down the population. Finally, the farmer terminated our experiment. He got fed up not having any peppers, and he went out and took the mower and mowed them all off, our traps included. Okay, so how do pepper weevils get to New Jersey farms? Well, forget the complicated graph. It comes down to infested produce comes into the processing plants, auctions, or terminal markets, and the infested waste comes out via dumpsters, field dumping or refuse, transported by vehicles and so on, and the weevils get to the farms. That's the long and short of it. Yep. So that's where we stand at the point. And my thinking is the weak link in all this is the infested waste. If there's something that we can do about that, as talking about composting earlier, if we could heat that waste up to 160 degrees, take care of the problem right away. It's just a matter of how do we affect that? Okay, recommendations. We have come up with recommendations. Try to get farmers to avoid planting within a mile of processing plants. In 2013, we made a really big deal about this. 2014, one of the farmers closest to one of the main processing plant moved his pepper field even closer to the plant the following year, 2014. And there were two brothers, and the one brother yelled at the other one, "Why did you do this?" They did have pepper weevils, but fortunately, some trick of luck, we managed to exterminate the weevils in that field. I think the population really hadn't become established. I think we were able to knock them out very early. The insecticides, there's any number of insecticides that will kill the adults. Pyrethroids, some of the neonicotinoid insecticides would do a great job of killing the adults. There's quite a number that would be very effective. Okay, so sanitation is the other main recommendation here. We try to avoid. In 2012, there was an infestation of pepper weevil in the Netherlands. They have greenhouse production of peppers there. They became very worried because they did not want to see pepper weevil become established in Europe. And so they approached us about sending them specimens for DNA analysis because they wanted to try to figure out where those weevils came from. And for 5 years, I haven't heard a thing from them. And now just a couple of weeks ago, I got an email saying, hey, we've got the genetic works done. New Jersey has got weevils from all over the place. Their weevils came from the Dominican Republic, but we've got them from Dominican Republic, Mexico, everywhere that you can think of. And also there was an infestation in Italy in 2014. And the way the Italians dealt with the infestation is they went in and did scorched earth policy. They destroyed the crop and everything around it. Okay, farm issue is how to prevent infestations, avoid planting near processors, monitor with the pheromone traps, sanitation, decrease farm-to-farm traffic. And what to do once infested, spray weekly and remove fallen fruit. A precursor to all this, we were asking farmers, once they had a field infested, where have you traveled? Have you gone to processors? Have you gone to the neighbors that have pepper weevil infestation? Invariably, they would say, nah, we didn't do any of that. Come back a week later and ask them again, where have you been going? Well, now that I think about it, we did do, And then go back and ask them a third time, yeah, we got produce bins from over here, and all of a sudden it becomes obvious, they've had a lot more interaction with other farms and other locations that had weevils than they realized. But that just kind of helped confuse the situation, how they move around. Right now, last year, I became aware of the fact that one of our processors was taking their pepper residue and spreading it out on farm fields, untreated. One of our farmers called me up and specifically took me to the field where this was occurring, and he said, I want you to put up pheromone traps here. And I did, and we caught weevils coming off these piles of pepper refuse. So I am in the habit of sending letters to the processors telling them about the number of weevils we caught on traps near your facility. And last year I included a sentence about, if pepper waste is heat treated to 160 degrees, there's no weevils. So I don't know if that will have any effect or not. And this is a close-up of one of these piles. You can see the peppers, it'd be very easy for pepper weevil to survive all this. The challenge, where do we go from here? There is a nagging question in the back of our minds. Do our farm quarantines needed? Prevent ag industry personnel going to the fields? Regulate processors? Well, that's a possibility, but the first two, no, it's not really feasible. Require assistance to the Department of Ag? That's been a nagging question also. And lastly, not only have we had problems here in New Jersey, all across the South and California. Talked with a fellow that was a farm manager for a place in California, and he said, yeah, once pepper weevils move in, all you can do is just write them out, harvest what you can, and that's it. The Canadians are also having problems with pepper weevil. They have in Ontario, there's a large pepper industry and a number of greenhouses, but also field peppers. And in the greenhouses, one of the outfits have hired a dog, Chili. She has been trained to sniff out pepper weevil. And so here's this huge facility of greenhouses that when they shut down for 3 or 4 months. They take Chili around and she sniffs all around, locating where pepper weevils might be. And then, of course, they exterminate them as they find them. But this is remarkable. This is one of the few times you can hear of a dog being used to help manage insect pests. So that's pretty novel. Yeah. All right, well, thank you very much. I'm sorry that we went over, but